our product strategy was often like, we'll run these 100 experiments and see which one works. And I'm like, that's not a product strategy. That's an experimentation strategy.
I was curious to know, like, when we were talking last, you were at Walmart. And then you went from Walmart over to Pinterest. And I saw that and I got all excited and I was like, oh, we should have him on again. And then I realized he just moved to Pinterest. He needs to go do some stuff for a little bit. So we have something to talk about.
Yeah, great.
Tell me about that move.
You know, it was kind of an interesting move. I was at Walmart for 8 years and it was a wonderful ride. I mean, the people there were great. It was one of the best experiences of my life. I mean, trying to take, Fortune 1, the biggest company in the world, and transform them to be like in the driver's seat, like transforming them to a digital powerhouse. Couldn't have asked for anything better. So I had been talking to Doug about how long I was going to stay at Walmart, and I've been there 8 years. And if you look at my background, I always tell people it's 6 months or 5 years, right? It's sort of my, it's either going to work and I'm going to stick around or I'm out of there, right? And when I got to 8, I pretty much, not that you could never accomplish anything in any job, but, I kind of done most of the things I wanted to do there. And so I started thinking about taking a little bit of time off. And just like you were mentioning your own kids, my kids were going to be home for one more summer. Little did I know that wasn't going to be true, but one more summer before they went off to college. And so I was going to take the summer off and do some consulting and maybe some advising. So I called a few friends of mine and got an introduction to Ben Silberman, the CEO of Pinterest. And he was, asking for some advice about how to structure the team. They're about to grow and could I be an advisor and that sort of thing. And I said, yeah, that sounds great. I fell in love with the company and the product. And then, as things come, their CTO left and then he'd asked me to join. And I said, that sounds great. I love the company. I love what you do. I'll join after the summer, and he said, you should start soon. Right. And I was like, okay, I gotcha. So I got into the company a couple of weeks before the IPO, which was awesome. But it was, how those companies that go from, such a great idea and such people that love the product so much, and then you just have to scale it. I mean, you just run into this massive scaling problem. And the good news is that from a talent density standpoint, the number of A players as a percentage of the company is incredible at Pinterest. It's amazing how smart the people are here. And that was another thing I was looking for in my next gig. And not that Walmart wasn't doing a lot of leading edge stuff, but this is really bleeding edge stuff. We have the best computer vision people in the world. We have the best graph database people in the world. We spend a ton of time on our machine learning engines, and it keeps me very on my toes, if you know what I mean. That's what a CTO wants, right?
Yeah, it's got to stay interesting. If you're not solving hard problems, then you just turn to mush.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the business model over there? Is it just ads? Because to me, Pinterest is like, my wife's on Pinterest a lot. Sometimes she'll send me a link to a collection of things. That's pretty cool. Like I was looking for, I built I have a safe room. I moved to Tennessee from Florida, and the person who had built this house was a contractor, and he was also a prepper. So he end of world type stuff. So he built this bunker, right? And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll put my guns in there or whatnot, and put my security system in there and just kind of make it like that type of room. And I was looking for inspiration ideas for how to design it. And my wife's sent me this Pinterest thing, and it was just unbelievable, man. It was just this curated list of the coolest safe rooms ever, and it had so many ideas. And that was my one of my first experiences with Pinterest.
It's funny you say that because people oftentimes will say hey, Pinterest is for women, but if you go talk to any contractor, any designer, any architect, male or female, they all have Pinterest accounts, right? I mean, some of the the burliest guys down the street, the plumbers or whatever, they use Pinterest for exactly that kind of inspiration. It's like, I don't know what color to paint this bathroom. Like, what is the latest color to paint bathrooms? And they'll have a Pinterest board for that. I just finished, or I'm halfway through. How projects get to 80%. I'm 80% of the way through building a doghouse. I just got a new puppy, and I of course had to make a Taj Mahal kind of doghouse for it. So I've been using Pinterest for, inspirational doghouses. So which is super fun to work on.
I love it. I have this like image in my head of like you doing this like Venetian painting type stuff.
It's more modern sort of architecture, and I wanted to do 100% recycled. So I tore apart some pallets and have been doing more slats and that sort of thing. But it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. I need another weekend to work on it before it's gonna be done.
You can have one more weekend.
Exactly.
You got to put make it a smart doghouse too. Put like an Alexa in there.
It's funny that you say that. I consider putting a solar panel on it and doing heating and cooling, but it just got a little bit crazy. Hey, does my dog really need a fan in his doghouse? It's kind of a.
We'll see. You'll learn, right?
Exactly.
Your dog will tell you.
Exactly.
Dude, this is cool. What type of hard problems are you solving over at Pinterest?
Well, another reason I love it is because it is a scale problem. I mean, again, in previous lives I've done it. When I was at eBay, we scaled early. Walmart, of course, everybody in the world shops at Walmart. Pinterest is a place where 400 million monthly active people come. They come to do everything from finding dog houses to safe rooms to redecorating their kitchen to what are they going to wear for New Year's, how to redesign their look, from a hairstyle standpoint, how to find a good pair of shoes, that kind of thing. So it's such a variety of people, things that are people getting inspired by. We have a ton of people that are like gardeners and they want to know how to do succulents and, design a garden space. So it's a big part of the variety. And so that means ingesting billions of pins coming through into Pinterest and then using both computer vision and machine learning to do what is content understanding. Like, what is this pin, right? Is it safe? This is obviously one of the most important things about Pinterest is making it the safest place to go on the internet. You don't have any politics. You don't have any, suspect content. You don't have any of the crazy stuff you see on the social platforms. So number one, making it safe, but then making sure that we really identify, what it is. People come here for inspiration, but they're wanting to learn, right? They want to, sometimes we call it edutainment. People are, building websites that are, teaching them how to cook or, how to garden or that sort of thing. So, and then of course, all the big hard problems when you're trying to, somebody does a search for, New Year's Eve gown ideas or New Year's, St. Patty's Day party ideas. I got to collect 1 billion images and pins, and how do I reply back in a good way? So, all the hard machine learning problems and the computer vision problems are great. But really, the reason I joined is because 90% of the people that come to Pinterest, they say, I wish it was easier to find the thing. Once I get inspired, I want to buy it. And I don't know if you saw this, whether it was shelving or, a safe for your room or something like that. Where can I buy that safe, right? Or that particular item? And it's really about merging all the work that I've done for the last 20 years, of, internet retail, getting connected with the inspiration platforms. And so that's really what I've been working on.
Isn't it always so clear in hindsight?
It is funny. Yeah, you say that. Bill Reedy, who's my new boss, just became CEO of Pinterest. Obviously came from Venmo, PayPal, and Google. It's been the last couple of years on Google Shopping and a few other things. So we have a lot in common now. I've been spending a lot of time with him on our shopping efforts and what to do next. So
I would say that was very frustrating for me because the whatever they were mounting to the wall that then they could put all the hooks on and everything. I could see it but I couldn't find it. And there was a couple different types and you couldn't tell if it was plastic or metal or and I've seen, some places on some of the pins, because we did a bathroom remodel too, when we moved to Tennessee. And and you like, it was 80% done for a long time, right?
Exactly.
But they did have a couple of like the best way for me to describe it was like a hotspot type deal, where it's like this little pulsating deal, and you could click on it and you're like, oh, that's the one. And so it was very sporadic in the sense that like, I guess it just picks up on the items. It's very clearly knows, right? Can creators like do it?
Yeah, that's a new tech that we've been doing. So over the last, so I've been here 3 years. The first year was, all obviously getting your feet wet and growing the team and just putting in some, the team, we went IPO, but we still hadn't been like a mature company yet. So we spent a lot of time on just basic sort of development processes and architectural standards and that sort of thing. The second and third year have really been about both creators and shopping, right? It just exploded especially when the pandemic came. We saw such an influx of engagement that we took the opportunity to really invest in the creators side and the platform side. And that really means, particularly on the creator side, we needed a content ingestion platform through all the APIs, but we also needed a place where you could actually create, a video pin and say, hey, here's what I want to do. And that came, of course, with creator monetization. So, creators don't just do this for the goodness of their heart. Some do, but, they want to be paid, and there's lots of ways to be paid, whether we do pays based off of engagement rates or whether they're using affiliate links. So a lot of people have Amazon affiliate links, and they're going to tag items. So, and that's exactly what we're thinking. Of course, we have some of the great computer vision people in the world, but identifying every single item and every single pin is a pretty hard computer vision problem, right? And it's much better to get somebody, including our merchants, will tag the items. Many of the merchants have these beautiful hero images, they call it, or lifestyle images. You'll see a scene of a room and it's got 10 products in it and that sort of thing. And guess what? The merchant knows that here is the 10 items that you have. And so creators and merchants both will submit both images and videos with products that are tagged, and that includes affiliate links, and they can get paid for that effort.
Oh, that is excellent.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think you'd get like really interesting lists from like a certain segment of the market that. Like for me, example, I have a couple interests, one specifically guns. Like I could put together like a really sweet list. And it's so cool how you've basically made it really easy for everybody to do that. And then you get really great lists, because that's the one thing that like makes me want to interact with Pinterest is the list I get will not be like going on Amazon and typing in like, hey, I need something over in this area. It'll be this, it's almost like a guaranteed artistic result.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about Pinterest this way as like, there's a million places to go on the internet if you already know what you want. There's really only one place to go if you don't know what you want, and that's Pinterest, right? Because you get there and you say like, listen, I'm thinking I want a modern barn kitchen, right? Like what the hell does that even mean to anyone, right? You can't do that search really accurately anywhere else. But when you do that on Pinterest, millions of people have pinned billions of items to a board called modern barn style kitchens, and so we use, the internet's population to help curate and sort of tag, machine learn tag, the billions of images around the world and now videos. And so that's what Pinterest is all about. And it's as you can imagine, it's a hard technical problem, but I tell people one of the main reasons I joined Pinterest, and a lot of people that work here that talk to me, is like, if you ask, 10 people, do you have a Pinterest account? What do you think of Pinterest? They go, oh my God, I love Pinterest, right? They show you their reports and here's what I'm working on and that sort of thing. So it's fun to work at an inspiration company, right?
And then what's your day-to-day like? Is it much different than Walmart, or is it still like coaching tech leaders? And
yeah, the one thing that was killing me at Walmart was the time I was on the road. So I was on the road 80% of the time. I had teams all over the world. When I joined Pinterest, 90% of the team was in San Francisco. So one of the first things I had to do, of course, is diversify that, because that's just an insane technical strategy these days, right? So we opened offices in Seattle, Vancouver, Mexico, Poland, Dublin over the 3.5 years that I've been here. a couple through acquisitions, but as you can imagine, I've also sort of standardized on sort of the North American time zones. If you heard those numbers, I didn't say India or China, largely due to the fact that we're just not big enough to deal with the tax that it takes on the time zone. Everyone calls it the time zone tax, right? At 11 o'clock at night is 11 o'clock in the morning, right? And it's a pretty painful process. So that was number one, growing the team. Just like we need to double or triple the size of the team. We've tripled it essentially since I've been here.
Why did you need to do that? Why did you need to triple the team?
Well, number one, we grew our revenues to, when I joined, it was, under $1 billion, and now we're, well over 2 billion. So we're tripling the size of the revenue. So everything from, the advertising stack, the work that we had to do, but plus, in order to build a whole creators platform and a shopping platform, we needed new team members. And, my team is relatively small. You take a look at my competitors, I've got, I'm very commonly, as I've done in my career, working with a small army against a much, much larger army. So part of the reason that I mentioned the talent density is so high is that we need a super high performing team because we're building products, not only for the whole world, but we're competing with the biggest the internet companies in the world. So we definitely have to have some scale in order to make that happen.
Like Alibaba, like who would be a competitor?
Yeah, everybody who basically buys ads on the internet. So all the social platforms, all the big guys now that we talk about, everyone from Snap to TikTok to Instagram to even nowadays, the ad platforms. You see Etsy building their own ad platform. Wayfair built their own ad platform. Walmart, of course, I built the ad platform at Walmart. So it's all about, making it easy for companies to understand when they're buying an ad. In our case, most of the time it's an inspirational type of ad where they're trying to get people to understand what they sell, and we get lots of new suppliers coming in for us, but making sure that they understand what the results are. They want, they want reporting back. They want, and it's getting harder and harder, given the IDFA work, to, directly understand, a correlation between somebody saw an ad on Pinterest and whether they actually converted, given all the cookie changes and everything that's happened in the last year.
Yeah. Did those Apple changes affect you guys at all?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We didn't do a lot of retargeting. Most people around the internet, they hated retargeting the most, even though it's one of the most useful parts of the internet advertising. It's the one that everyone said is the creepiest. I'm looking at something on one internet retailer, and then I jump over to some other website, and then it says, "Hey, do you want to buy this item?" And you're like, "How did this company know that?" I was looking at something on some other company. So we were less impacted by those changes. We also, the way Pinterest works is we use what you're pinning and what you're engaging with as the recommendation engine versus lots of companies target you based off your age or your profile and sort of thing. Pinterest doesn't really do that at all. We know your age and a couple of other things, but we don't know. We're not really targeting, advertising or pins based off that. We're using the inspiration engine is based off what you're engaging with. So people will come in for everything from inspirational quotes to tattoos to gun safes or whatever. And guess what? You're going to get more gun safes and you're going to get more related items to those. And most of it's visually appealing versus it being something more targeted. And so as a result, we've been less impacted by it. But it can be hard, especially because. Do you know about Last Click and the sort of internet advertising platforms? So Amazon, Google, and many of the other platforms really optimize companies for last click. If you're looking for a couch, it's very unlikely that you're going to go to a website and click and buy that couch in the same day, right? You come home, you say, "I like this couch." You show it to your wife. You say, "Hey, here's what we're going to do. Should we go look and see if they have it over at Living Spaces?" Blah, 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 And then 30 days later, you might buy a couch, right? Oftentimes, Pinterest is a place where we introduce those brands and those types of couches and the styles to consumers maybe weeks before they buy. And smart advertisers like Home Depot and Wayfair and IKEA and some of the other sort of high consideration companies understand a multi-touch attribution. Like say, hey, they saw it on Pinterest first, then they, went to the store and checked out IKEA for a while, and then they ended up buying it after they saw an ad on some other platform, right? And they'll give us, quote unquote, each a slice of that advertising revenue, because they know that that's a really good place to start your journey. The more nascent advertisers are like, oh, no, they clicked on Amazon and they bought it, so Amazon should get all the advertising credit. They didn't find it on Amazon. They found it on Pinterest first. And so part of our shopping journey is how to connect that together. Like, people don't want to leave Pinterest to go click off and go look at some other retailer. They want to be able to know hey, this exact item is this exact item, and I'll click over to the retailer and buy it, right? And so that way it's really easy for people to understand that it came from Pinterest, right? So we've got a lot of work to do there, and it makes it hard, right? And that's just the way of the world now, right?
Well, I experienced that firsthand, understanding attribution and awareness versus direct conversion.
Right.
The podcast, we sell sponsorships where people come on, right? And that we've been doing for about 3 years now, and we had to figure out how do we prove it to the customer? Because when you use a podcast, when you hear something we're talking about Pinterest, no one's going to go into the description of this podcast and click a Pinterest link to go to Pinterest. Everyone's going to open their phone up and Google or go directly to the site. And so we saw these customers repeat buying from us a lot. And so I set meetings with them. And I just chained 30 meetings back to back with all of these customers. And the thing that made them successful versus our other ones was that they track it. They have a how do you hear about us? And there was a modern CTO podcast either on their page or in their CRM when their salespeople would ask in their first meeting. And so I tell that to the other people and they'll just be like, yeah, it didn't work. I was like, well, you didn't track it. And it's real hard. Well, yeah, it came through this last click. And so you'll find, or at least what I have found as far as the spectrum of the market, all the different customers, is some just really understand the difference between marketing and branding. And they really understand the, how to track things, what's trackable, what's not trackable, the things you have to do anyways. And some, I don't know, some customers are smarter than other customers.
100%. And we're also, by the way, you described the problem exactly with Pinterest. The other thing is, of course, the last click people are saying, oh, no, we get all that credit. We're the attribute, you don't need to worry about any of that stuff. It came from here, right? So you're fighting against the, no, those platforms don't work. They're, blah, 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 So anyway, it's, it is what it is. So part of it, you just have to get smarter about doing things like tracking and customer education and, all that sort of thing. The other good news is that, frankly, advertisers want to diversify their ad spend. I mean, the social platforms have become, pretty scary in some cases to advertise on. In some cases, they get a lot of bad press when crazy stuff comes out, and so there's a lot of brands that are just absolutely nervous, and they want a safe place to advertise. And we spend a lot of time talking to people about, why we're the safest place on the internet and why it's a part of our DNA. We spend a lot of technology cycles, making sure that's true.
Well, that's interesting because I didn't know that. I'm learning about that now. Also, if you were to ask me when we started the conversation, in the first 10 seconds, if I use Pinterest, I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
But all the examples you've given about the bathroom, the gun room, I've looked at tattoos on there. There's so many. I looked the other day, I was looking for a panda cartoon character, and a list of these panda cartoon characters came up. And it's funny that my brain didn't register that I use it, but I'm on Pinterest, couple times a year at least.
Yeah, we get that a lot. Yeah, it's funny. We also are really good at SEO work as well. So oftentimes and frankly, it's natural because, to your point, people are looking for lists of things, and Pinterest has billions of lists of curated items, and as a result, we have the best results in many cases. And so the search engines know that, and we end up, they end up feeding us a lot of data, right? So we want to
That's almost always how I get to you, by the way.
Yeah. We want to get less and less dependent on that. I mean, Google changes their algo constantly, and they definitely demote us in many places. So we've got work to do, right? Yeah, we would rather have you open the app, if you know what I mean. But
well, I think I got to the point where like I had to make an account, whether it was like sharing something with my wife or some system that said I looked at too much stuff. I don't know how you guys do it exactly, and I'm sure you run experiments constantly.
Yes, we do.
So at some point, I got an account.
Yeah, we have about 1,000 experiments running at any one time. So it's and it's the other thing about Pinterest that was pretty different from Walmart is born in the cloud, born with an experimentation platform from the very beginning, where I was like shoehorning in both the cloud and experimentation platforms into my other tech stack. So everybody uses. I mean, we use the experimentation platform to launch features, every single feature ever, versus at Walmart I had to ingest it into like our search engine and all kinds of stuff that was built before there was experimentation. And so that part of it is amazing. We're one of Amazon won't tell us if we're number one, but we're pretty close on AWS as number one customer, in the top 5 for sure, and probably the government agencies maybe are spending a little bit more than we are, but they won't tell us exactly. But yeah, we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on AWS. We just passed an exabyte, which I didn't want to. We were trying to prevent ourselves from growing our data stack that big, but it's a massive platform as well that we're having to manage, right? So we do a lot of experiments that even we call it NUX, new user experience. Whether you should have to have an account or not. But to your point, a lot of people share their boards with someone, their spouse or their architect or their designer or a friend, and it's hard to do any of that without an account, right? So yes, I'm glad you have an account. Thank you.
I got to talk a few months ago to the CTO of GoDaddy, and one of the things I was super surprised about is the culture they have for experimentation. It's like deeply embedded into their culture. They've built their own systems to sort of how they can propose experiments, and then you run them and you watch them, and it's like one central system that will allow experiments to happen across their entire platform, all these different products that they build and own. And so that's baked into Pinterest core culture too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, from the beginning. As a matter of fact, when I came here, one of the problems I had with it was this will sound very demeaning, but it was like our product strategy was often like, we'll run these 100 experiments and see which one works. And I'm like, that's not a product strategy. That's an experimentation strategy. It's great to have it, but you need to be going somewhere. Like, hey, we're going this direction, and then here's the 100 experiments that are going to get us there. But yeah, it's very common to be running. I mean, we just upgraded our machine learning systems as well, and we can run like 1,000 models now instead of like 100, just to test which ones are, which signals are better for relevance. And so we're just constantly improving that. So both on the machine learning side and on the client side, we're running experiments like crazy. And it is, we don't even think about it. The other stat that I use a lot, which I was blown away by when I joined Pinterest, was we have an analytics system that consumes both our big data platform and some of our SQL data. 60% of the company uses that on a monthly basis, like 60, like crazy. Like, it's amazing how data oriented people are in the company about decision making. In my first few meetings when I joined Pinterest, there was this guy, Dan Lurie, who's one of our best product managers. Somebody asked a question in a meeting. Literally, he opened his laptop, did a query, and gave the answer back. And, that kind of thing, having real-time analytics and having a company that answers questions with data it's awesome to work at that, versus the Hippo. I just this is the way we're going. I feel like we should go this way. It's like literally a data-oriented company. And it's hard to understand how different it was for a company that just doesn't have access to the analytics they need in order to get answers to data in real time. And it's amazing to work for a company like that.
I think this is a good time to plug the careers page. You guys have a careers page at Pinterest?
Yes, we do. Careers at Pinterest. Yeah. Careers.pinterest.com. Yeah, we're still hiring. We had, like many companies, we've been cautiously moving forward with hiring. So we cut back quite a few. I've been watching, even during the pandemic, our CFO, Todd, and I sat down and said, listen, we should like open recs like the beginning of every quarter. Like, let's see how the business is going, and then open recs. And actually, it was one of the smartest things we could do because we were able to pick up some incredibly good talent from Airbnb and some of the people that got harder hit by the pandemic. And as a result, just not only was I able to grow the team fast, but I got some incredibly strong talent. And while this one looks a little scarier from a overall economic standpoint, we're still taking advantage of like trying to grab the best people we can. So
yeah, it's definitely a super interesting climate because I'm 34. So I started getting into business early. And so I lived through, in the business world, I had experience going through the real estate crash, right? In the early 2000s. And so like, when you were going through that, it was pretty clear. There was like all focus. There was like one thing happening and that's it. Now there's like 18 things happening. Nobody agrees. They're like debating whether a recession's possible. We're in one, or it's already happened, or it will happen. And if, the way I responded as a CEO is I said, what can we, like, let's look at our efficiency. Let's trace back. We're heavily calendar driven here. So you don't have to put like exactly what you're doing, but just like the block of time, like I'm spending time in this area here. That way we can understand where time's spent. And we just make sure that connects. How far is that from revenue? Like how many things, like if we're doing something like really far off, that's just kind of like a fun thing that we're doing, that might be something to cut. And we're just figuring out how to get like lean so that, regardless of what happens, the company, you're always thinking about survival. Like if you're a CEO and you're not thinking about survival, you're lying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really smart. I think we talked about this even when I was at Walmart. I've been obsessed with engineering productivity for 20 years, and it's an incredibly hard thing to measure. And I've had, various forms of success of looking at, things like NPS in combination with, things like build times and number of pull requests, KLOC, and number of, code lines of code you're able to commit. But to your point, not only it does a whole bunch of things when you focus on this. Number one, you're increasing the productivity of your team. Awesome for the company, awesome for everyone. Number two, it makes the engineers incredibly happy, right? Most engineers I know want to write code. They don't want to deal with some, approval systems or security review or, some compliance thing or like a build that takes, more than 30 minutes to run, And so I've always seen, much higher return on investment on productivity efforts for the engineers in particular that have in these times are really good returns on investment. And even my product team here is 100% aligned with that. The amount of gains we've had both on engagement and revenue over the last 3 years that came from just ML, machine learning productivity efforts, it's like a lot higher than what we would have expected. Let me put it that way. And so we just continue to invest, like how to make the machine learning people more effective, right? It returns every time, right?
And then when you see, speaking of algorithms and machine learning, I was thinking when we were preparing for this call, like about TikTok, because before we talked, TikTok was the thing. Kids used it. In the past 2 years, like passed Google as like one of the most visited sites. It's hugely addictive, and they've got their algorithm. And I didn't ever really use it. I tried using it. I actually did a group call like on a Friday and got all my team together, and I was like, all right, show me how to use TikTok. And they did. And the reason why I didn't use it is because they knew I was male, and they kept showing me like explicit stuff.
Totally.
And even when I would like downgrade it and stuff, they would still put it in there like one every 10 posts. And so I gave up after, probably I invested 4 hours into it, and I decided I don't want to see that stuff. I'm not doing it. But what I've noticed after using that, and then using Instagram stories and then shorts on YouTube, this is like a trend that's going across all of these media companies. Have you guys done anything related to that?
Yeah, your experience is what we call doom scrolling. And I think the internet is commonly using that. And we want people, when they come to Pinterest, and they use it for 10 minutes or an hour or whatever, to walk away, more inspired and happy. And oftentimes that's the opposite of what happens when you're doing it on a TikTok or one of these others. You walk away and you're like, oh my God, I just wasted an hour of my life, Yes, is the short answer to your question. So short form video is something we invested largely with creators, and the ability to ingest not only videos to Pinterest like a pin, but the ability to do it in a way. Sometimes we call it edutainment. So it's entertaining, but you're like learning how to plant a garden. And most of the creators know that they can't just be fact people. They have to have a style, and that's sort of, you see all these cooking shows where the people are like, they're really skilled at their craft, but they're also really creative when they're talking about how to do substitutes and that sort of thing. So we look for creators that are in this sort of edutainment space that like the short form video. So we've been experimenting with both putting videos into your feed, which if you scroll through on mobile, you'll see it pretty often. But we also have another one we call the Watch tab that have just video threads, and that's been going okay. We see, not surprisingly, a lot of the early Pinterest users don't like the video format, and a lot of the new Pinterest users love the video format. So it's a little bit of things that we have to deal with experimentation, which is always fun. But yeah, I don't think it's going away, because I think the video it's so much more engaging, and even when I was looking for how do I repair the brakes on this particular car, a series of images isn't going to work. You need some videos, right? You need some instructions on how to do that. And, oftentimes when I think about our competitors, I actually am more nervous about YouTube than on some of these other platforms, because that's a place where you go for this sort of medium term, long format, how do I build a cabinet, or remodel my bathroom or whatever, or replace the O valve in my sink or something, right? These sorts of things is what really engages really well on Pinterest.
Yeah, I discovered YouTube Shorts 2 months ago, and I spent 20 minutes watching it.
Yeah,
and it was just one of those rare times. I've got a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and then one that'll be here this week. So
you got no time.
You know what it's like. Yeah. So when I say I spent 15, 20 minutes on something, that's all my free time. Right.
Yeah.
And I was I found it. I was this is so addictive, because Google's known me for 20 years.
Yeah.
So it was so relevant to who I am, and it was so perfect that it was just really interesting. And I tend to follow people that are, I guess you would call them modern philosophers, the talking heads, but they're talking about philosophy type subjects, and I like them. And so they've got it down to a science. It's I get a little insight or something interesting, some knowledge, and then it sticks with that theme, right? It doesn't constantly try to pull me away. It keeps feeding that, and I love it. Because obviously you can have it doing something. It's like a knife, right? It can be save a life or kill somebody, right? You can have horrible habits, and you can be feeding yourself junk, or you can be feeding yourself good stuff. But when I found that format a couple months ago, I went to my production team and I was like, "This is addictive. This is fantastic. We need to do clips like this," because we were doing clips that were 2 to 3 minutes of let's say you gave some great advice about leadership or growing your team, and we'd clip that out and be all right, here's Jeremy, CTO, talking about this, and you'd talk for 2 or 3 minutes. And that's good. And that's what we've been doing for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
But when we condense that down and cut out like to your most important 60 seconds and put some graphics in there that you don't have to be like crazy complicated graphics, just some words or whatnot. Man, does that perform. Oh boy. And especially if you have visuals and stuff, like we can make a clip here and we could be showing like screens of Pinterest, like while we're talking, and people just love that.
That's what we call it, idea pins. I know everybody calls it something different, but it's the same type of thing. You may take a hero image, a short video, a list of ingredients, a technique on how to like stir or, saute or whatever. And to your point, it's really engaging and really helpful. I mean, it's really helpful, right? In a very short period of time. And so I think the format is here to stay. Of course, to your point, there's stuff that gets lots of engagement that is irrelevant. And so we want to be the place where that doesn't happen. We want to be, super relevant and that sort of thing. So that's what I think about the challenge. And it's a lot of the same computer vision and the content understanding problems that we have with images. You just have, a bunch more images, right? You take a segment shot of a video, and you kind of understand what's going on with computer vision, and it's great. It's a rapidly adopted tech that we have to use, right? And it's going really well. We've even experimented a little bit with live shopping as well on Pinterest.
What's that?
So very typical, almost like, home shopping network style, hey, I'm going to sell this item for 20 minutes and I'll show you how it is and that sort of thing. It's not, as you read about it around the internet, it doesn't really work in the United States. It's very popular in Asia and it's a pretty interesting format, but it's just hasn't taken off. And even some of the social networks have cut their live shopping stuff. So we've been playing around with it a little bit, but it's good for some products, but it just doesn't work for everything. So we'll see how that format. We're constantly experimenting with new formats and capabilities to see what Pinterest loves, right?
Oh yeah, that format's a no-go for me. I saw Amazon did it, and they happened to do like a live shopping one of something I was buying. So I clicked on it just to be like, what is this? Because you have to explore, right? And there was so much filler because they needed to reach this like audience within this range that like it wasn't good. I don't know how to tell you it was bad. I just saw it and I was like, this is not good. I just can go read the bullet points and the descriptions and read the reviews, and I can get the information I need to make this purchase without watching you like try to engage an audience and make it like do all this other.
Some of them you guys saw a bad one. Some of them are really good. The question is about reach and to your point, it's audience. Like, we're making this video and it's being seen by a few hundred or maybe even a couple of thousand people. But from a scale standpoint, that's not enough, right? I mean, we're talking about reaching, a video. Our videos reach, hundreds of millions of people, right? So, if you do one cooking show and it's you sold 1,000 items, yes. And we've seen lift or people do it on Pinterest. They increase their sales. That's great, but is it really enough to warrant a whole format and everything? So we're playing around with it. We'll see how it goes. That format's good. The other one that we're playing around with is AR, of course. So I talked a little bit about our tech there. We've done all the early easy stuff, which is like, hey, I want to see a chair or a couch in this room. I want to put a new piece of art on my wall and I'm going to use my phone to see it. But the innovative stuff we've done there is we've done what we call AR try-on. So you've seen this now. Some other companies have copied us, but you can use makeup and do hairstyles and all that kind of work. And we have L'Oreal and all the big beauty brands ingesting all their content so that you can try on and buy a lipstick. And the great part about this is it's literally if you use it, you're 5 times more likely to buy it. Right, which is crazy. I mean, that kind of lift just doesn't exist on the internet, right? And so these kind of technologies, when you're using and you're engaging with it, you really know that you have a committed buyer. To your point earlier, and that's one of the great parts about Pinterest. So we've done that with makeup, lipstick, and we've now done. We call it inclusive search. Again, a place to be the safest place in the internet, but also like the most inclusive place in the internet. If you do a search for like hairstyles, you can choose You can choose your skin tone. You can choose your hair pattern type. So you can like curly hair or straight hair or wavy hair and that sort of thing. And it just makes it so much easier for people to find people that look like them. I want styles that look like this, right? And, those are really hard engagement problems. Like, if you don't have information about a person, I told you earlier, we're not spending a lot of time on like personalization data or capturing this data. But if you specify and say, hey, I've got a lighter skin tone range or a darker skin tone range, or I got this wavy hair, then your pins just are magic, right? They come out just perfect for you, right? And it's a wonderful experience. And again, all powered by the same computer vision team and technology. That is what's made Pinterest special for so many years.
Pinterest is how I found my beard.
There you go. There's tons of that. But back to my point. Even everyone says, hey, men don't use Pinterest, but men use it for fashion. They use it for DIY ideas. They use it for paint colors. They use it to find their beard and mustache styles. That's another thing about Pinterest is it's a really safe place to explore a new you, if you know what I mean. Like everything from like, hey, I want a new hairstyle to like, even like the more extreme styles. Like I'm thinking about like transgen, that sort of thing. Literally, like it's a safe place to do that by yourself. You're not sharing. You're not being worried about being judged. And we hear that from creators too. Creators come to Pinterest and they create a piece of content on Pinterest, and they go to Instagram and they create another piece of content. It's like people that use Pinterest don't hate on them. They go publish this and like, your content sucks. It's terrible, blah, blah, blah. They come to Pinterest like, hey, I like this. Well, you could think about that. Like lots of helpful people. They just say it's so much easier and nicer to build on Pinterest that they just love it. Many have abandoned all the other platforms just to build on Pinterest because of the audience. And again, that's not just because the people that use it. It's part of our technology stack to eliminate sort of trolls and all that stuff we have to deal with. It's our problem, hard tech problem.
You guys have always had, I think I always notice brands that have really good design, or at least software that has really good design, because I've been building software my whole life, right? And when I see, I was like, oh, they invest in design. And that was one of my early memories of Pinterest was it was really minimal and it looked really nice. They did really great things with typography, which I love when people understand how to do that. And it was super lightweight. But yeah, that's like one of my earliest memories of Pinterest, because you come across stuff and you're like, that looks like it's going to be huge.
Yeah. Evan, it came from Evan, our co-founder, who is really a design expert. As a matter of fact, now that he's retired, he's been working with Johnny Ive on his design studio. So, this is the kind of caliber of designers we have here. I talk about my team a lot, the computer vision team and the machine learning team, but we have some of the world's best designers as well. We built, it's been a design first company for a long time. So, it's just a wonderful place to work. Our product team, has been a design-centric machine learning. It's hard to find people that play both sides. Like, we really know that, oftentimes when I describe Pinterest to people, it's like, it's this app, that's this beautiful website that's showing you billions of beautiful image powered by the most unbelievable machine learning and graph database system that you ever have thought of, right? And that's what Pinterest is. It's like, it's literally both sides. I grew up, my father was an engineer and my mother is an artist, so it kind of makes sense that I ended up at a place like this. But it is sort of the best of both worlds, like this beautiful place in the world powered by this incredible engine that makes it go, right? Makes it scale globally, right? 400 million people around the world, right? So it's many, many languages, many different cultures. I always love seeing like Diwali ideas and things celebrations I've never even heard of. There was a huge thread on, I think it was on Reddit, talking about home designers in Nigeria, and Ben and I were just riffing on who would have known that home designers in Nigeria are going ape for Pinterest, right? It's a wonderful thing.
That's cool. Yeah, it sounds super rewarding. I want to make sure that we watch your time here because I don't want you to be late to your next meeting.
Got it.
But as we wrap up, last question: what are you learning right now as a leader?
Oh, I'm learning how to run a large team when we never see each other, right? It's from my time at Walmart, one of the things I did I spent a ton of time with the team all over the world. And the pandemic's been tough. I mean, trying to run a large organization, you really have to triple down on your communications. You have to really understand documentation and build a culture of investing in docs. We're having, I was just talking to a woman who was a lawyer, and she was talking about young lawyers and how do they, learn law and in a law practice, when you're young, you're usually, working, 15 hours, and you're working with clients, and you're working with 20 different clients, and you're randomly going to meetings to hear things. And this is how engineering is exactly. And so I've been very nervous about how do we bring on new engineers and ramp them at the same pace as we did pre-pandemic. And I know the freedom that the work from home lifestyle has given people, especially for folks like you who have young kids and that sort of thing. It's been freeing and amazing. But I look at back my time when I had young kids your age, I was sleeping in the office sometimes. And I look back on that part of my career, not only the best time I have in my career from a people and accomplishment standpoint, but I learned more than I ever had, right? I'm just worried people have forgotten that this is an important part of culture, right? And how do you build that in an environment where you're completely remote? So that's the hardest thing to do in leadership right now is to figure out how to balance the fully remote environment, right? We're not quite fully remote. We're coming in once every other week or once a month. Most teams come in about once a month, but so people get to know each other, but it's still pretty different, right? If you can't lean over to your buddy and ask, hey, what's that thing again that, that rebuilds the system when it crashes? It's like, I say everything that can't be solved in Slack that isn't a half an hour meeting is like this no man's land, like the death of the 5-minute meeting. Like I just need somebody for 5 minutes. Like you have to schedule it next Thursday for 30 minutes, right? It's like, and so productivity, I've been worried about productivity. I've been worried about onboarding, and then just worried about, how fast, people grow in their careers in this situation.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for
great catching
sharing,
up again.
Man. It's always good to see you. Thank you so much.